My name is Brooke. I'm 32 years old. And the day I carried my son's dinosaur backpack up the attic stairs, I thought the worst part would be the dust. I was wrong, because waiting at the top wasn't just the stale air or the splintered floorboards. It was a white crib my parents had dragged up there for my 3-year-old daughter, wedged between a stack of winter coats and a broken rocking horse like she was an afterthought. "We had to give the nursery to your sister's baby," my mother said, one hand on the banister, the other already scrolling through a list of swaddles she wanted to order. My father kept his eyes on the rafters like a building inspector. "It's cozy. Children like forts." Cozy. Forts. A 5-year-old boy with mild dust allergies and a 3-year-old who still wakes from nightmares moved under a roof that sweats in August and shivers in November because the real bedroom must be cleared for the favorite daughter's newborn. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment and tell me where you're tuning in from. And don't forget to subscribe, because this isn't just a story about bad manners or crowded houses. It's about what happens when a family draws a map and labels one child VIP and the other temporary. Before I tell you how the attic became my line in the sand and how help came from the one person I never expected, let me take you back 6 months to the day I lost a marriage and a home in the same hour. The paper said final decree, but what it meant was, you and the children have 30 days to vacate. Technically, we'd been separated for 4 months before the judge made it official. Emotionally, my marriage had been dissolving for a year in quiet, polite arguments and doorways we walked past each other through. We met at 26, married by 27, and had 2 beautiful kids, Adam, 5, tender-hearted, a hoarder of smooth pebbles and knock-knock jokes, and Cece, 3, fearless, the kind of toddler who runs toward the ocean and believes in magic. The house? It never really belonged to us. It was titled in my ex-husband's family trust to keep the asset protected across generations. We'd renovated the kitchen and painted cloud stencils on Adam's ceiling anyway, pretending sweat equity could substitute for a deed. When the marriage ended, the trust didn't blink. We packed our lives into cardboard and nostalgia. "Come home," my dad said over the phone, like he was offering a spare room at a hotel he owned outright. "It's just until you get back on your feet," my mom added, tapping her nails against the counter the way she always did when she was counting unseen things, money, favors, years. I said yes because I had 2 kids and 30 days. Because the rental market looked like a cruel game show. Because pride doesn't tuck anyone in at night. I arrived on a Tuesday with a U-Haul and a promise to myself. 3 months, 6 if I had to. I'd stash paychecks, pick up weekend shifts, and find us somewhere small with sunlight. There are 3 bedrooms in my parents' house. The primary, which my parents share, the blue room, which had been my sister's, painted a shade my mother calls periwinkle and I call look how it flatters Virginia's eyes, and a small office off the hall where my dad keeps old tax files labeled with ampersands and dust. "I'll take the office," I said. "The kids can have the blue room. I'll put their beds in there now." My mother hesitated. "Let's not make anything permanent. Your sister might need that room soon." Soon was the word they used when I was 10 and Virginia was 8 and needed a cello because Mr. Goodman says she has such tone. Soon meant new cars, new shoes, new doors opening and never closing. Soon had a way of turning into always. Still, the first few weeks, I tucked my resentment into a drawer with the spare batteries. I cooked, I cleaned, I Venmo'd half the grocery bill, and when my father complained that the price of butter had doubled since the 80s, I smiled and said I'd pick up store brand next time. Adam lined up his toy cars along the blue room baseboard. Cece fed invisible tea to the stuffed giraffe. We were guests, but guess who made the bed and wiped the sink? I was determined to make this work, if only because my children were sleeping under a roof that didn't leak, and for now, that had to be enough. My sister, Virginia, is 2 years younger and exactly the kind of beautiful that makes room noise soften when she walks in. She's also good in ways that my parents translate into destiny. In high school, I was reliable, she was remarkable. In college, I pieced together scholarships and weekend shifts at a bakery. She changed majors 3 times and still graduated into a job my mother called creative industry, with the reverence usually reserved for surgeons and saints. I used to think favoritism was a childhood weather system that would eventually pass. It turns out it just finds new barometers. Guess what? Virginia said one Sunday, palms pressed to her belly before any of us needed the hint. April. My parents became an orchestra of enthusiasm. It wasn't their first grandchild. Adam and Cece had already filled the house with school plays, birthday parties, and crayon drawings, but this was their first grandchild born to the child they liked to brag about. Your sister will need a lot of support, my mother said that night, folding tiny onesies in her mind. New mothers shouldn't feel alone. I said, and then stopped, because what was the point? When Adam was born, my parents had been on a cruise. When Cece arrived, they stopped by the hospital with a fruit basket and a reminder not to depend too much on us because boundaries matter. Boundaries apparently mattered less when Virginia was due. Support arrived in Amazon boxes. The blue room got measured, and paint swatches fanned across my mother's kitchen island like poker cards. Wait, I said, tapping the periwinkle. The kids sleep there. It's the best light, my mother said. And the closet is bigger. I can move Adam's bed into the office with me, I offered, but Cece still wakes sometimes. She needs a door I can open fast. My father rubbed the back of his neck. We'll figure it out. Your sister isn't due for months. Then, one humid Saturday in July, Virginia's husband assembled a walnut crib in the blue room while my mother filmed the process for social media. The video was captioned, "Making Space for Miracles." I stood in the doorway with a pack of color-sorted Lego in my hands and felt like a trespasser in my children's bedtime. That night, I wrote a budget. How many shifts I could add at the clinic, how many freelance data entry gigs I could scrape from the internet while Cece napped. If I hit every target, I could afford first and last month's rent by November. I drew a thermometer on a notepad and let Adam color in the bars as we saved. Is it a game? He asked. Kind of, I said. If we win, we get our own place. Will the new place have a yellow door? Cece asked. It might, I told her. We can paint it any color you want. It started with little slights that felt like static at first, and then like electricity. At dinner, my mother cooed over the crocheted blanket a neighbor brought for the baby and asked Adam not to smear pasta sauce. When Cece sang the alphabet too loudly, my father held up the remote like Moses parting the sea. Quiet, I can't hear the score. The nursery took shape down the hall while my kids learned to make themselves smaller. I coped by scheduling joy, library Wednesdays, park Fridays, pancake Saturday mornings with sprinkles shaped like stars. At night, I told Adam stories about explorers who built their own cabins and Cece stories about foxes who chose their dens. When they slept, I scrubbed pans and applied for apartments I didn't get. Favors for Virginia multiplied. My mother canceled school pickups to attend her OB appointments. My father drove across town to drop off an ergonomic chair so your sister's back doesn't ache. When I asked if he could watch Adam for an hour so I could get Cece to a pediatric dental checkup on time, he sighed at the calendar and said, "We're stretched thin right now. Can't you reschedule?" Children, my mother said to me in the tone that meant she was offering wisdom, are resilient. Yes, until they learn that resilience is just the name grown-ups give to neglect. Virginia had her baby in late April. A boy. My parents floated for weeks, buoyed by the helium of a perfect newborn. They called him our little prince, and if you think it's an exaggeration, you've never seen a grown woman iron sheets for a bassinet. The first time Virginia brought him over, my mother pried Cece's fingers off the stroller handle and said, "Careful, sweetheart. No sticky hands." Adam stood back, palms tucked behind his back like a curator. "He's small," he whispered. Smaller than the cat. For a while, we hovered there on the edge of something hurtful, but not yet beyond explanation. Then June rushed in with thunderheads and my father's favorite phrase, "We've made a decision." He delivered it after dinner, as if it were the weather report. "Virginia and Ben need more space when they visit. And your mother thought of a wonderful solution. The attic." The attic, I repeated, slow like a word in a foreign language. It's charming, my mother said. We'll lay down a rug and put a fan up there. Children love play lofts. Play lofts, I said. Not bedrooms. It's temporary, my father said. Until Virginia's little one outgrows naps. Noise carries from the blue room. Adam has seasonal allergies, I said. Cece still wakes. There's one tiny window that barely opens. You're overreacting, my mother replied, already halfway up the stairs with a tape measure. We all had to make adjustments when he moved back home. That word again, home, like the place could claim us without returning the favor. I climbed after her because the alternative was to scream. In the eaves, the air tasted like old cedar and summer heat. My dad brought up a box fan that rattled like a loose tooth. My mother dragged the crib to the corner and fluffed a toddler pillow. When I tucked the kids in that night, Adam on a narrow twin mattress pushed against the wall, Cece in the crib with her giraffe, I kept my voice light. It's an adventure, I said. Like camping. Do we get a flashlight? Adam asked. Yes. Can we go home when the adventure is done? Cece asked. Yes, I said, and meant a different home entirely. I didn't sleep. I listened to the house brief like a big animal, hot breath in, hot breath out, and mapped my exit in the dark. I could pick up 2 more evening shifts at the clinic. I could sell the engagement ring I'd left in a drawer because I never knew what to do with old promises. I could call the one person who still thought well of me from my ex's family, even though we hadn't spoken in months. My ex-husband's father, Thomas, lives in Canada now. He divorced my ex's mother a decade ago and emigrated for love and later stayed for the quiet. He doesn't do group chats. He sends birthday cards with watercolor boats. He is, in our family mythology, distant. Distance, I had learned, can be another word for peace. I drafted a message to him in my head and fell asleep with the phone on my chest. The attic wilted us. By July, Cece's nap sweat soaked through her curls. Adam woke coughing at 2 a.m., and I held him on the landing where the air moved and counted his breaths until they slowed. Meanwhile, the blue room acquired blackout curtains and a white noise machine for the prince. My mother announced a no toys downstairs policy because clutter stresses me. Adam's Lego museum relocated to a shoebox. One Sunday, Virginia arrived with the baby and a laundry basket of tiny clothes. My mother loaded them into the washer ahead of a hamper I'd brought down after 3 days of overtime. Newborn things can't sit, she said. They get musty. Cece, wanting to help, toddled to the nursery doorway with a board book. Read to baby? We don't touch his things, my mother said automatically, and my daughter's face, my brave girl's face, folded into itself like paper. That was the moment I decided to leave in days, not months. That was the moment my promise to myself grew teeth. So when, 3 nights later, I came home from a late shift to find the attic even emptier, my kids' drawings removed from the sloped wall to make way for Virginia's visiting bassinet, I didn't argue. I smiled a new kind of smile and said, we'll make do for now, and in my head I said, until tomorrow. I texted Nancy, the charge nurse who has saved my sanity more than once. Can the kids and I crash with you for 2 nights? She replied with an address and a heart emoji before I'd finished typing the question. Then I texted the person I hadn't planned to involve, Thomas, Mr. Archer to me for years, my ex-husband's father anyways by habit. Me, hi, it's Brooke. I know this is out of the blue. I'm sorry. Are you available to talk? Thomas, Brooke. Hello. It's late here, but I'm awake. Is everything all right? Me, not really. I'll keep it short. I'm with the kids at my parents'. It's not good. We're safe. But I need to get them out. He called. His voice sounds like stories by a fire. Tell me, he said, and I did edited, but not softened. The attic. The favoritism. The way my son had started chewing his sleeves again, a habit he hadn't had since preschool. The way Cece whispered sorry when she bumped a chair. I thought you were in the house on Waverly, he said when I paused. It was never mine, I said. Trust property. A rueful exhale. I know. I argued against that arrangement back then. Didn't win. I have a short-term plan, I said. A colleague's guest room. Then an apartment as soon as I can sign. I've been saving, but I'm still short. How short? First and last month's rent short. and furniture, and a security deposit, and childcare until school starts. Silence, not the kind that punishes, but the kind that makes room for thought. I have a place, he said finally, in upstate New York, by a lake. I bought it years ago when I thought I'd retire there. I never did. It sits empty except for summer weekends. It's in my name, no trusts, no strings. It's not grand, but it's safe and it's yours if you want it, for as long as you need it. Deed and all, if that's what it takes to get you and the children a home. I didn't speak. Sometimes kindness is so bright you have to squint. Brooke, he said gently, you don't have to, I know. I want to. And before your pride says no, don't let the kids pay for the adults' mistakes. What about, I started, meaning all the complications, the way my ex might react. I'm divorced from his mother, Thomas said. And my relationship with my son is complicated. But this is between you and me. Send me the kids' full names for the paperwork. We'll move fast. I cried then, not the messy sobs I'd been swallowing for weeks, but a quiet, shaking gratitude I couldn't restrain. Thank you, I said. Thank you. Pack tomorrow, he said. Drive to your friends for a night. I'll have a lawyer email you by morning. And Brooke, yes, you're not crazy. You're a mother drawing a circle around her children. You'd think leaving would feel like a jailbreak. It felt more like defusing a bomb. I woke the kids early. Adventure day, I said, and meant it this time. We folded clothes into rolling suitcases and tucked favorite objects where little hands could touch them. Adam's pocket rock, smooth as a wish. Cece's giraffe. I packed documents, the kids' birth certificates, immunization cards, my divorce decree. I left the ring in the drawer. In the kitchen, my mother stood at the sink, her reflection wavering in the window. Going somewhere, she asked, as if the bags were decorative. We are, I said, and kept my voice unshakably kind. We're going to stay with a friend for a few days. Then we're moving into our own place. You're overreacting, she said automatically. This is just until your sister settles the baby's routine. You moved my children into an attic, I said. That's not a routine, that's a decision. And I've made mine. My father muttered something about gratitude. I didn't take the bait. Adam zipped up his backpack with the solemnity of someone tying off a wound. Cece waved at the blue room as if it were a passing train. On the porch, Virginia arrived with the baby stroller and a to-do list. The baby slept, pink as a seashell. She didn't look at me. She looked at my mother. Did you move the humidifier? She asked. In the nursery, my mother said. I don't want the prince to sniffle. I carried my daughter down the steps and, for the first time in months, felt the air on my face like a blessing instead of an obligation. Brooke, my father called after me. Don't expect to be welcomed back if you storm off like this. I turned and smiled, truly smiled. I stopped expecting that a long time ago. We drove to Nancy's. We ate scrambled eggs at her kitchen island minus the commentary. The kids slept on her pull-out couch like travelers who'd found the right station. I stayed up late with my laptop and a PDF Thomas's lawyer sent, a simple, human document in a world that loves to be complicated. The house on the lake existed on Street View, gray clapboard, 2 maples out front, a dented mailbox with a red flag, and in the deed my name would appear as owner, not guest. Thomas didn't send a speech. He sent wiring instructions and a scanned utility bill with the account numbers circled. No tests, no hoops, no prove you deserve this paperwork. In the morning, we drove. The lake announced itself before we saw water, air cooler, crickets louder, silence that wasn't emptiness, but space. The house had a porch with a swing and 2 chairs that didn't match and a door in need of paint. Inside smelled like cedar and summer books. The living room had a wool rug with a stain shaped like Ohio and a sofa that had seen better years and still chose to be comfortable. The kitchen was small and honest. The bedrooms, 2 upstairs, 1 downstairs. No attic. Do we live here? Adam asked, cautious, like the walls might say no. Yes, I said. We live here. Can we jump? Cece asked, pinging on the rug. Please do, I said, and meant it as permission and prayer. I called Thomas from the porch. He didn't ask for a thank you. He asked if the swing squeaked, it did, and whether the stove ran too hot, it did, and told me the neighbor to the left had a vegetable garden and the neighbor to the right liked to hand out popsicles to any kid who wandered near on Saturdays. You'll get the keys in a day or two, but the back door sticks, you can shoulder it, he said. Utilities will transfer next week. You should see the deed recording in your inbox by Friday. Why are you doing this? I asked, even though he'd already told me. Because someone should have done it for you when you were younger, he said simply. And because I can. We hung up. I sat on the top step and watched my son arrange his cars on the porch rail and my daughter teach a stuffed giraffe how to swing. I texted my parents a photo that showed nothing but a sliver of water and two small bodies laughing. Me, we're safe and settled. Please don't come by unannounced. We'll be in touch when we're ready to visit. My mother replied with a flood of messages that traveled the usual path: worry, blame, weather advice. My father said nothing. Virginia sent a single thumbs up, a digital shrug that meant, fine, do what you want. The silence after tasted like relief. That first week, we lived small and large at once. We ate pancakes for dinner and learned where the light hit the kitchen table at 4 p.m. We started a paper chain, one ring for each day we'd been somewhere that belonged to us. We took the paper chain to the lake and counted. On the 4th day, Adam slept without coughing. On the 5th, Cece woke at 2 a.m. and I carried her not to a landing, but to a window where she could see stars. On the 6th, I found a thrift store in town where the owner tucked 2 children's books into our bag on the house and said, welcome. By the 2nd week, I'd transferred my schedule to a clinic nearby and found a preschool that took Cece 3 mornings a week and didn't call curiosity misbehavior. A neighbor left tomatoes on our porch with a note signed Ruth, ring the bell if you need sugar. I bought yellow paint for the front door. You should know, the help I accepted didn't come with strings because Thomas cut them off himself. He refused a repayment plan. He refused ownership games. He refused to make me prove I was worthy. But change has a way of stirring old waters. When my ex found out how, I don't know, news travels like weather, he called. You're living in my father's house, he asked, as if my father were the same as my things. I'm living in my house, I said. Your father gave it to me. That's insane. What's insane, I said, is moving your kids to an attic and calling it generosity. A long quiet. Then, in a voice that was as much boy as man, you should have told me. We don't owe each other that anymore, I said. We owe our kids decent beds and grown-ups who don't make them feel like guests in their own lives. He didn't apologize. He didn't explode. He said, fine, and hung up in a way that told me he was far away from becoming the kind of father who sees beyond the mirror. My parents eventually drove up. They texted first, which I took as the first sign of respect I'd seen from them in months. They stood on my porch and looked smaller than I remembered, which is another way of saying I had grown. We brought soup, my mother said, holding a paper bag like a passport. My father stared at the lake and cleared his throat. Nice place, he said. Solid porch. Thank you, I said, and meant the words, if not the history. Inside, Cece showed them where the giraffe slept, on the pillow, not under. Grandma and Adam explained how our paper chain worked. My mother touched the yellow door and blinked fast like paint fumes had gotten in her eyes. We didn't realize, she said, voice thin, how it looked. The attic. It didn't just look like something, I said. It was something. We thought your sister needed more. You thought my children needed less, I said, still kind, still unshakable. My father folded the soup bag closed and opened it again. We shouldn't have said it was temporary as if you were. We shouldn't have said a lot of things. We can visit, my mother offered. On Sundays. With notice. It sounded like a treaty clause, and maybe that's what it was, a ceasefire built not on forgiveness, but on better terms. You can visit, I said. With kindness. The kids notice everything. They stayed an hour. My mother admired the thrift store bookshelf as if it were a museum piece. My father fixed the squeak in the swing with a little WD-40 he found in the shed as if competence were an apology. It wasn't, not exactly, but it was a language I understood. That night, I sat on the porch with the yellow door glowing at my back and wrote a message I wanted you to read. If you're living under a roof that calls you a favor instead of a person, you are allowed to leave. If someone says temporary and means you, not the situation, you are allowed to turn their word back into yours. If you can't leave today, make a chart. Color a bar. Ask for help from the person who has nothing to gain but your relief. They exist. I promise. Sometimes they live in Canada and answer the phone at midnight. 6 months is a long time and also the smallest drop. In that span, we learn the names of the lake birds, how to patch drywall, which grocery store clerk slips lollipops to kids if you ask nicely, how to say no without swallowing the word on the way out. Adam stopped chewing his leaves. He started first grade and came home with mud on his shoes and secrets about recess politics. He told our neighbor Ruth that his favorite thing about the house was not the swing, even though it is very good, but that I know where everything goes. He put his cars in a shoebox he labeled himself, Adam's Things. It might as well have said I belong. Cece learned the neighbor's dog's name and the mailman's, and she sings to the yellow door when she leaves for preschool. Wait for me. She built a fort under the kitchen table with a sheet and called it Not an Attic. I earned a promotion, weekday hours, a raise, my name on a schedule in permanent ink. On Fridays, I buy fresh bread from the farmer's market and we eat it with too much butter and no one complains about napkins. When Thomas visited in autumn, he brought 2 life jackets and a toolbox. He let Adam hand him screws and taught Cece to name the oars. He stayed 2 nights in the guest room downstairs and left the bed made military tight. Before he drove away, he handed me a folded sheet of paper. I put the final deed in the county records, he said. It was always yours the moment you crossed the threshold. Paper just catches up to truth. I don't know how to repay you, I said. Live here, he said. That'll do it. He hugged the kids, shook my father's hand. My parents had driven up again. The treaty was holding, and told my mother the tomatoes in the garden looked like jewels. She glowed as if he'd paid her a compliment in a currency she understood. Later that evening, my father sat on my steps the way fathers do when they've run out of complicated speeches and arrived at plain ones. You were right, he said. About the attic. About all of it. My mother, who has not said the word sorry out loud since 1999, made a pie the next weekend and left it on the counter with a note that said, simply, for the kids. Sometimes apologies come sugared. Do I think my parents love me? Yes. Do I think love without respect is a house with a mislabeled door? Also, yes. Here's what I know now that I wish I'd known sooner. Boundaries aren't walls. They're railings on a porch that keep the people you love from falling while you both enjoy the view. Fairness isn't a math problem you solve once. It's a daily practice. And family isn't defined by the floor you slept under. It's built where you're allowed to breathe. The attic is still there, in the old house, the rafters, the fan that rattled, the crib like a bad idea, and sometimes I imagine it like a museum exhibit. This is where a mother decided to stop letting other people write captions under her children's faces. If you've ever been asked to shrink to fit someone else's comfort, I see you. If you're coloring a savings thermometer on a scrap of paper and calling it a game so your kids won't taste your panic, I see you. If you've already left in your heart and you just need your feet to catch up, I'm rooting for you. Drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me the moment you realized temporary had become forever in a house that wasn't yours. Then tell me the color you'd paint your front door if you could choose. Mine is yellow. It looks like morning. And if you need a hook to hang your courage on, take mine. The night my parents moved my children to the attic, I stopped being a guest in my own life. Because the thing about attics is, they teach you exactly where your ceiling is. And the thing about mothers is, we learn how to raise the roof.